Good morning. Welcome to Trinity Baptist Church once again this week. And I hope that you managed to have a really enjoyable Christmas, however it was that you were able to celebrate. Now, I wonder, are you the kind of person who loses things? Because I am. I lose things all the time. I'm forever misplacing my keys or my wallet or my watch. Usually I'm kind of running around the house trying to find at least one of those things when it's time to leave, which then kind of makes me late. I think I would be a very punctual person if it wasn't for the fact that I misplaced things. And it's not that I kind of intentionally lose things. I always try and put them in a safe place so that I won't lose them. But then, I guess you know where this is going. I usually then forget where the safe place is. One thing I've not yet managed to lose, however, is my children. Although sometimes I think I would quite like to. Only joking. Of course, our former Prime Minister, David Cameron, famously made the news, didn't he, when he managed to misplace his 8-year-old daughter, Nancy, back in 2012. He left her behind in a pub. Both he and Mrs. Cameron had left in separate cars, and they both thought that the other had Nancy with them. And it was only when they got home that they realised that she wasn't there. I imagine that actually it was something similar that occurred in today's passage, which you can find in Luke chapter 2, verses 41 to 52. And it's not that Joseph and Mary left Jesus behind in a pub, nor did they travel in separate cars, but they did misplace the young Jesus, and it took a while for them to realise that he was missing. And I believe that the reason is similar to that of the Camerons. You see, it was traditional when travelling in large groups like this for the women and the children to travel first, and the men would then bring up the rear. As Jesus was just 12, he wasn't yet classed as a man, and so Joseph no doubt believed that he was up ahead with his mother. However, the purpose of the trip was to prepare Jesus for manhood. You see, initially the tradition was for Jewish men to visit the temple 3 times a year. However, as the nation of Israel had kind of spread out across the country, it was no longer practical to do that, and so the tradition had become to visit the temple just once a year. And at 13, boys were welcomed into the temple. That was when they became a man and they celebrated their bar mitzvah. And so it had become a kind of a custom that at 12, boys would travel and would see the temple courts to prepare them for the coming year. And so it was possible that Jesus believed that Jesus had travelled with the men to continue that process of preparation. It was only when they set up camp that they realised that Jesus isn't with them. And you can kind of imagine the panic, can't you? The accusations. I thought you had him. No, I thought you had him. The sort of frantic searching and running around to other friends and family. Have you seen Jesus? Have you? Where could he be? And perhaps they were calm at first, but then I imagine it would have got more and more frantic and more stressed. And then finally, the realisation, we must have left him behind. We're going to have to turn back. And so then they hurry back to the temple. You can skip over it because it's just a short passage, and so we miss it sometimes when we're reading it. But this wasn't a quick journey. It says it took them 3 days to find Jesus. And those of you who are parents, can you imagine the worry of losing your child for just 3 hours, let alone 3 days? But then they find Jesus there, sat in the temple courts, asking questions and listening to the teachers talk about God. My favourite line of this passage says that when they saw him, they were astonished. Words can sometimes have 2 meanings, can't they? And I think astonished works like that in this passage. Because it could be astonished, like, wow, look at our son and what he's doing. Isn't he impressive? Or it could be astonished, like, wow, We've been searching for you for 3 days and you've just been sat there. You've not even thought about us. How could you do this to us? I wonder if maybe there's a bit of both going on in Mary and Joseph. Certainly there's a hint of that second meaning in Mary's words as she says to Jesus, "Son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you." And then comes Jesus' response. "Why were you searching for me? Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house?" 12-year-old boys have that kind of way of speaking, don't they? Duh, didn't you know where I'd be? That probably did little, I imagine, to calm Mary down. But we're then told that he was then obedient to them after that, and I'm sure that the overriding feeling for Mary and for Joseph was just one of relief at finding Jesus safe and sound. Now, there's lots that we could think about in this passage, but I think actually it could act as a bit of a challenge to us this morning. As we ask ourselves, do we sometimes misplace Jesus? And how do we do that? Mary and Joseph were no doubt in a bit of a rush. It was a long journey from the temple back to where they lived. And there were lots of other things for them to think about. And they kind of made assumptions about the whereabouts of Jesus. But they then did little to check on his whereabouts until it was too late. I wonder, are we sometimes too busy? Do we allow the things of everyday life to distract us? And do we relegate spiritual things, our relationship with God, to second place while we deal with things that appear, at least on the surface, to be more urgent? I wonder, do we get out of the habit of working on our relationship with Jesus? Do we just take it for granted? Or do we make it a priority? As a church, our verse for this coming year, for 2021, is 1 Chronicles chapter 16, verse 11, which says this: "Seek the Lord and his strength, seek his presence continually." And I want us to commit this year to really taking that seriously, to seek God's presence continually, not just as an afterthought, not just on a Sunday morning, but let's be people who are serious about getting to know God better and spending time with him. And as we do so, let's be people who listen to what it is that he's calling us to do. It's kind of speculation on my part, but I do wonder if maybe part of the reason that Jesus didn't seem to kind of understand the worry from his parents is that they missed him telling them of his desire to stay at the temple. Certainly, Jesus seems to think that they should have known exactly where to find him. We've already said it took them 3 days to find him, and I'm not sure if that's just because the journey back to the temple took that long, or perhaps they looked in the wrong places first. And I wonder, sometimes, are we guilty of looking for Jesus in the wrong places? Are we guilty sometimes of throwing ourselves into the things that we think Jesus wants of us, without really taking the time to listen to where it is that he's calling us to be? And so this coming year, let's be people who just delight in God's presence. People who seek him continually, and people who listen for and to his voice, that he might call us individually and collectively forward. And so may you seek the Lord and his strength, and seek his presence continually. Amen. I just want to finish today by saying thank you for joining me, not just this morning, but throughout the whole of this year. It's been a strange one, hasn't it? But as we come to the end of 2020, I wish you a very happy new year, and I hope that you, like me, are looking forward to all that God has in store for us in 2021, all that He is going to do with and through us over this next coming 12 months.